Fios is not cable. We're wired differently, which means you can get the fastest internet available with equal upload and download speeds from 50 to 500 megs. So you can upload 200 photos before your favorite song is finished. Click the ad and switch to Fios today to get our best offer ever.
Blog Talk Radio.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome to the King Jordan Radio Show for Thursday, June 30th, 2016. Tonight on the show, we'll be discussing the rumors that Nancy Grace set to leave HLN. We'll talk about that with the panel. We'll talk about a mother who killed her own two daughters. Frat boy is accused of rape. But did he rape? Legendary coach passes away. Those stories and more tonight on King Jordan Radio. Tonight, we're honored to have back to the program. He is a forensic expert. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome back Joe Scott Morgan. Good evening, Joseph. How are you?
Hey, Jordan. Hey, everybody in the audience. It's good to be with you.
Glad to have you, pal. Let's go out to, I think he's still in by the CNN offices, also, like yourself, with Nancy Grace earlier. He's a New York City defense attorney and a CNN analyst. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Alex Sanchez, who joins us tonight. Good evening, Alex. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good, Jordan, and good to be here with you and Joe. Look forward to an entertaining show tonight.
Well, Joe brought this up earlier, and I think we should just come out and not sugarcoat and just get right to it. The rumors of Nancy Grace wrapping it up with HLN. Now, Joseph, you wanted to say something about that as it relates to crime stories on TV. So why don't you go ahead?
I'm sorry to see Nancy, heading out the door. It's been a fantastic run. She's had a longer run than most people in this business. I think a lot of people get into it and think that it will just last forever. People in the audience, it's hard to, kind of imagine, for those that like hearing about true crime and this sort of thing. Nancy's kind of that last voice that you have that's out there, in big markets on television, that kind of does this. She's gone. I think that she's left a mark. She rattled a lot of cages, good, bad, and indifferent. But I know that I'm eternally grateful to her for the opportunity she's given me.
Right.
She gave me a platform. Has for a couple of years now to have an opinion, and I'm very, very, very thankful for that, because there's not a lot of folks out there that have the opportunity that I've been blessed to have with her and with HLN in general. It's been fantastic. Knowing her, I've known her for a long time. We go all the way back to when I was still with the medical examiner's office in Atlanta, and she was a prosecuting DA. And as a matter of fact, a real quick story. When her producers first reached out to me to appear on the show, I agreed. She was looking for somebody to do forensics, and I'd been doing stuff like After Dark and that sort of thing on HLN. And when
right.
I finally came face to face with her in the studio for the first time, she said, "Do I know you?" I was like, "Yeah. I used to work with the medical examiner's office in Atlanta," and and she said, "Yeah, I think I remember you." She says, "Was I mean to you?" And I said, "Yeah." I said the last conversation we had was about 10 years ago, and you cussed me out on the phone, and I hung up on you. She says, "I'm sorry, I was mean to a lot of people." I said, "That's okay. You're an attorney, I understand." But we've had great fun. We've had great fun together, and she's given me a lot of great opportunities. I think she's given a lot of people a lot of great opportunities. So I'm very very thankful for it.
Oh, there's no question. And Alex Sanchez, you also been a part of the Meet the Great program for the last decade or so, and what she thoughts of her leaving.
I started with Nancy Grace on Court TV, and this was like 15, 16 years ago. So I've known her a long time. One thing I always appreciate about that show is that, she lets defense attorneys go on there, and she gangs up on the defense attorneys, but at least you can get your argument across. You know what I mean? And she enjoys the battle. She enjoys the back and forth. And that's important because, sometimes the prosecution is not always right. Sometimes the defense is not always right. And it's important to at least get various sides of a story out in any type of case. And you have the opportunity to do that for the most part on that show. So I'm sorry to see her go. I was down there today at CNN, and I was asking around because I was wondering, is this serious or is this, some type of a contract ploy or something like that? And they said, no, this is serious. She's leaving. She's definitely wants out for whatever reason. And there's a lot of people that are concerned about the changes that are going to be taking place. I've heard
big changes.
The rumor is that they're probably going to, because this is the highest ranking show on that HLN network, and I heard that they're probably going to continue. Yeah, they're probably going to continue with this type of a show, maybe with a different host. Maybe there'll be a little changes, but I don't think the idea of that this show, a crime show of this nature, is just going to disappear and they're going to substitute it with some other reality show. I think it's going to continue, maybe in a different format.
Yeah, and you got to remember though that you don't have to remember, but Jodi Arias, Casey Anthony, George Zimmerman, when those trials were going on, I would imagine that the ratings were much higher because people coming back from work or whatnot would want to catch the updates of those big trials that were major trials while she was on the air. So there hasn't been that really, since Jodi, I would say, that must-see trial yet. You know what I mean?
Well, those type of cases, especially that Jodi Arias case. I mean, there was something for everybody in that case, and the networks they just love cases like that because people have a lot of curiosity in what happened. Jodi Arias was a very good-looking woman, very articulate. It was a brutal crime. It involved sex. I mean, it had everything. And so there was something in it for everybody, and they just pumped it for all it was worth.
Yeah, kind of dovetailing with what Alex said, just stepping back for a second to what he said, I thought it was a fantastic point regarding the adversarial relationship that she has on television. Some people take umbrage at that. The cool thing about it is that our legal system is built on a conflict basis. Where you have two sides going at it, and that's about as close as you can get. She teams up on the defense attorneys, but the defense attorneys get to speak their piece, and that's a lot of. It's a bit more dramatic on TV, but that's a lot what you see in the courtroom, and a lot of people never get a chance to go sit in on a criminal case, and so from that perspective, you get to see what that adversarial relationship is like, because that's what it's about. You go head to head, and people like me, we're just kind of in the middle. We just go in there and state the facts, and and questions are posed to us in a particular way by either side. She's giving voice to that.
Joe, one thing about being a defense attorney on her show is that you're not just fighting Nancy Grace. I mean, you're fighting other people, whether they're reporters or experts or whatever it is. I was on that show the other day with Nancy Grace, and I voiced an opinion, and one of the other guests comes out with this vile, vicious attack against me based upon what I said. And you know who that was? It was Joe Scott Morgan himself.
God almighty, I tell you. I knew that was going to come up. I knew it was, but the one time that I say something, it had to be my buddy Alex on the other end of it. And
Alex.
Hey, what can I say? All I said, I mentioned something about little green men from Mars. That's all I said. It wasn't that vile. Alex is a New Yorker. He's got really thick skin.
Maybe I'm exaggerating a little.
Well, Nancy Grace did put you in that situation to make you answer that. So you're in a tough spot either way.
Hey, we're creatures of free will.
I've been cursed out before, so I'm used to it. So.
Oh yeah. I would never curse you out.
Social will be on for the rest of the summer. All reports have it. So, I guess another 10 weeks or so, and then that will be the end for Nancy Grace, as we lost Jane Velez Mitchell, NHLN, Mike Brooks, Beth Harris,
Vinny Politan.
Vinny
Politan.
Yes, Ryan Smith
whatever.
for ABC.
Whatever happened to Mike Brooks? He just disappeared.
He's doing local television in Atlanta and doing radio. So he's still active. He's active and doing stuff in local media right now. And I've been appearing on a show with him and Vinny called Georgia Mysteries for some time. For the past couple of years about unsolved cases in Georgia. But Mike's still out there. And hustling, and that's what you have to do.
Well, we have another killing by a mother. She kills her own kids. Let's hear the story, and we'll talk on the other side.
We have two females lying in the road that have been shot.
Horror at a birthday party as a mom guns down her two daughters and is in turn shot dead by cops. The tragedy unfolded in an affluent neighborhood outside Houston. 42-year-old Christy Sheets exploded in rage, shooting her daughters, Madison, 17, and Taylor, 22, as they fled into the street to escape her wrath. Taylor was scheduled to marry her boyfriend today. The family had also been celebrating Dad Jason's 45th birthday party. He could be heard shouting, "Don't do this, they're our kids." When police rushed to the scene, they came across a shocking sight. A mom standing over the bodies of her daughters with a gun in her hand. When she refused to drop her weapon, police feared that she would shoot her daughters again. They opened fire and shot the mom dead.
The subject went back into the residence apparently to get more ammunition.
Shot fired, I shot the subject.
One subject down.
Bride-to-be Taylor was medevac to the hospital but later died. A mom killing her own children is known as filicide. Psychologist Jeff Gardier.
This is something that is absolutely shocking, and therefore this isn't just about someone just losing her temper and then killing her daughters. There's something much, much deeper going on.
Madison Sheets was the youngest of the two girls. This video, obtained by Inside Edition, shows her cooking Mexican dishes with friends for a high school project. And this is her sister Taylor, clowning around, dancing to a video game. The killer mom owned several guns and recently posted this anti-gun control message on her Facebook page, vowing never to give them up, saying, "That's right, I have 10 guns." Now a grieving father is faced with an unimaginable loss. His daughters wiped out by their own mother.
He's lost his family. His world is going to be upside down at this point.
Joseph Scott Morgan is the story that you have been following, and what's your take on this?
I don't know. I hate to steal Alex's thunder here, but the only thing I can really say is just mental illness. It's really hard to. It's very, very difficult to try to explain something like this away. It's horrible. That obviously goes without saying. I cannot imagine the horror that the daughters experienced having their mother essentially execute them. There's a lot of pressure that's involved, that's being applied. I think probably the most curious thing is you've got this confluence that's come together with the one daughter that was about to be married, as the report stated, that day or the next day at that time, I think. There's been a later report that has come out that the husband had announced that same day that the marriage was over with and he was going to get a divorce. So, you've got this horrible kind of storm that was brewing. You've got this daughter that's a rising senior in high school that was shot there in the house and killed, and then it ends with the police having to bring a resolution through deadly force, and they met that force because it just sounded like this woman was she was bound and determined to take as many people with her as she could. So very, very, very heartbreaking case.
Yeah, Alex Sanchez, this is a very heartbreaking case, and it's just like there's so many of these cases that it's really mind-boggling. Do you have any explanation besides the mental illness that probably added to this? No question.
Yeah, I mean, mix guns with mental illness, and that's a very, very lethal combination. One of the things that troubles me is how come this woman had access to so many weapons, apparently legally?
Maybe.
I mean, before this incident, before the murders,
right.
Police had repeatedly been called to their house, like 14 times at least. Now, if the police are called to your house 14 times, I don't care who's right and who's wrong. At least temporarily, guns should be removed from that house, or the person should have to surrender them. Because there's something going on in that house. Yeah, there's some type of volatile atmosphere, a poisonous, toxic atmosphere that is taking place. And that's the wrong place to have weapons available to anybody. And it turns out that she had access to all these guns. She was publicizing it on Facebook. And when push came to shove, she decided to use it in the most egregious of manners. And I think for those people that are advocating for gun control, unfortunately, this is an argument in their favor. And that's just the reality of it.
So is Orlando Gil?
Yeah, it's a horrible, kind of earth-shaking event that comes about like this, where and you think about what Alex just said, that the police had rolled out there on 17 different occasions on domestic-related issues, and I'm a big supporter of trying to get people mental health assistance. One of the things that has really kind of fallen by the wayside nowadays is that it's almost virtually impossible to get someone against their will into a mental health facility. And the police know this, and a lot of the people that are out there know this, and it used to be a bit easier. It almost takes an act of Congress now to get somebody committed, even for a temporary visit, to be evaluated by a mental health professional. And if you've got the police showing up 17 different occasions, there's obviously a major problem. You don't have why isn't special services going out there to conduct some kind of crisis intervention, or why isn't something going on that could have intervened in this situation. This woman obviously had weapons. She had no business having a weapon because she's mentally unbalanced, and now this huge tragedies befallen this community.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's really hard because, as you know, here in New York, Alex, you'll attest that if you get caught with a gun, you're going to joint for a year or so.
Let me tell you, New York State now has one of the harshest gun laws in the United States. If you have never been arrested before, and you are in possession of a loaded handgun, and let's say it's not, you don't even have it on you, it could be in your car, the trunk of your car. It doesn't even have to be loaded, but if there's bullets, nearby,
right,
you're facing a minimum jail term of 3.5 years in jail, minimum. Right? That's a lot of time for someone that has never ever been arrested for a gun. There was an 85-year-old lady. She's like 80 years old in the Bronx. I think it was in the Bronx, either the Bronx or Manhattan, but I think it was in the Bronx. But she came to the courthouse for, I don't know, jury duty or something like that, and she had a loaded gun in a pocketbook. They offered her probation. She says, I'm not going to plead guilty. I'm not going to shoot. I don't know. She didn't want to plead guilty because she, maybe just because she's 85 years old and she was a stubborn 85-year-old lady. I don't know why she didn't want to plead guilty, but she didn't. She ended up getting convicted, and she was sentenced to 3.5 years in jail. Those are very harsh penalties. Now, you could try to negotiate it down. Usually they'll come down to like 2 years in jail. But even 2 years in jail is a lot. Plus, you have a violent felony on your record, and that stays for life. Your record doesn't go away. It doesn't get erased or exonerated. Very serious penalties in New York.
And you remember that football player who shot himself, only himself, and he got 2 years. Yeah,
he got 2 years in jail. Right. He got 2 years, and actually, I think he got off pretty easy because, in that case, a shot was actually fired. Now, he shot himself, but what if he had? What if he had shot somebody else? And it was in a nightclub. I think he got off reasonably easy because there's a big difference between possessing a gun and then possessing a gun that somehow ends up getting fired during the course of an incident. That elevates it. It makes it more serious. So you got 2 years in jail. What was that, Plaxico? And
Plaxico Burris.
And he got out, but he's walking around with a felony conviction on his record too. And that's not good.
You
may not affect
vote,
him that much. But what?
Is it true that you can't vote if you're a convicted felon in New York?
If you're a convicted felon, yes, your rights to vote are limited for a certain period of time, 10 years or something like that. Your rights are limited. And, a lot of your civil rights are. And on top of that, if you get arrested again, the penalties become greatly enhanced. You want to go for certain jobs, maybe it wouldn't affect Plaxico Burris. But if you're an ordinary Joe and you get a gun conviction, try getting a job. Try getting a job as an elementary school teacher. Or try getting a job with a company. They run all these security checks. Try joining the military. If you're not an American citizen, you're going to get booted out of the country. There's a lot of harsh consequences. As a matter of fact, I tried a case of a guy who lawfully bought a gun in Pennsylvania, and he brought it into New York State, right?
Really?
It doesn't make a difference. If you lawfully buy a gun in another state and you're allowed to have that gun, you could be certified, licensed, you could have taken all the training in the world, but if you bring it in New York and you get arrested, you are facing 3.5 years minimum jail time in New York. And he inadvertently brought it in. They prosecuted him. I had to try the case. I won the case, but I had to try it.
Oh, wow.
To try to have this guy exonerated. They are not playing games in New York when it comes to guns.
How long ago was this case?
That trial was about maybe 4.5 years ago. Yeah.
4.5 years ago, and he was
Yep.
He was acquitted.
Guy he was acquitted. He had no prior record. He had formerly been in the military. He had a license, and he bought the gun perfectly legally in Pennsylvania, and he mistakenly brought it to New York. And I can see a lot of people who have licenses for guns in other states may believe that I got a license here, I could just go to New York, you know. They have reciprocity, but they don't. And you get arrested, and, they don't care. They'll prosecute you. And like they try to do with this guy, but, we were lucky in that case.
No question. New York treats the gun laws as if, the way they should be. It's just my opinion, and I'm always going to stick by it. And I think people have the right to bear arms, but what's going on? In other news, let's hear about this legendary coach that passed on from a horrible, horrible disease. We'll talk about it on the other side.
Now to the celebration of Pat Summitt's life, and what a life it was. The legendary coach passing away overnight, 64 years old. Yes, she set records, becoming the winningest coach in Division I college basketball history, but she also touched so many lives, inspiring players and fans all around the world. A legendary, unstoppable force, a pioneer in women's sports, and a fierce competitor.
I don't know about y'all, but I want to win a national championship.
An inspiration to millions, and also a longtime dear friend.
How you doing? So good to see you.
Named the NCAA Coach of the Year 7 times. Pat Summitt coached the University of Tennessee's Lady Vols to 8 national championships. And with 1,098 career victories, she's won more games than any coach in Division I college basketball history, men's or women's.
Pat Summitt and destiny.
Quite simply, the definition of success. But before she was a college basketball legend, she was a girl from humble beginnings. And you slept in the same crib until you were 6 years old. That's poor.
And I was pretty long.
With 3 older brothers, she learned to play basketball. Her tenacity and grit led her to play in college at UT Martin and later the Olympics, where she coached the 1984 USA women's basketball team to their first gold medal. And as much as she was feared on the court, during her 38 seasons as coach, she was loved off of it. And in 2000, she was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. But in 2011, she again made history.
I've been so amazed at the response to dementia and how I'm going to deal with it.
Announcing that she not only was diagnosed with early onset dementia, Alzheimer's type, but decided to continue coaching and fight her disease the only way she knew how, on the court. How long do you think you can coach?
Well, I said I'd probably coach for 3 more years and then go to the beach or hang out here with the dogs or do whatever. I work out 5 days a week. They say that's very, very important. Keep my mind sharp. I got a lot of puzzles. I want to challenge you here a little bit.
A year later, she made the difficult decision to step aside as the head coach at Tennessee.
It was hard, because I didn't want to, but I felt like I needed to step down.
But she continued to fight, launching the Pat Summitt Foundation, dedicated to Alzheimer's research, while also providing services to patients and caregivers. The University of Tennessee even starting the Pat Summitt Alzheimer's Clinic. Yet all the while, Pat remained the biggest Tennessee fan.
What do you miss most about coaching Sanchez? Being on the court.
In 2012, with her son and the light of her life, Tyler, by her side, she received ESPN's Arthur Ashe Award for courage.
I'm going to keep on keeping on. I promise you that.
Have you had the why me moment?
I've had a few of those.
What is it that you want people to understand about you that can help them?
It may not be the best thing, but you just got to make it what it is and just keep living your life. What I want to do is get other people to understand. If you have dementia, don't be afraid of it.
Pat battled Alzheimer's using the same strength and dignity she once used on the court to fight the disease and the stigma that comes with it. And for that reason, and many more, to sum it up, Pat Summitt is and forever will be the ultimate champion. It's like once you're a Lady Vol,
always a Lady Vol.
Always a Lady Vol. I don't have any more orange dresses. I did this in honor of her and all these wonderful things, and we talked about earlier, 100% graduation rate. Boy, she just wanted the best.
Yeah.
For everyone.
Great example.
Yes, she really was. And a great cook.
I was going to ask you about that.
Two ovens in her kitchen, and she had both of them going at the same time, and she's just going to be missed. She is going to be absolutely
That was a
missed.
lovely tribute.
Yeah,
to her.
really
what
was.
an impact she's had on so many lives.
Thank you.
Good way to go for this legendary figure, Alex Sanchez, with this dementia at a very young age.
One thing they didn't mention was that she had been granted the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is
Yes.
a very high honor granted by the President of the United States. What I learned about this story is that, one person can make a monumental difference, good or
Yes.
bad.
Yes.
People say, one person doesn't make a difference. How much influence could? One person can make a big difference. We've seen it through history, where there could be one person, a very influential person, and they could become a monstrous character, like a Hitler-like character, and because of who they are and the force of their personalities can wreak horror. And yet there can be other people, because of who they are, can bring about monumental positive changes. As far as I'm concerned, she was one of the great advocates for women in this country. I mean, when she started, basketball for women was like nothing. It was a little game.
Right.
It wasn't considered part of the NCAA, but she made it that
Nowhere near it.
And
right.
Because of her force of personality and who she was, and because of the type of a person and the encouragement, she was loved on and off field. That one person made a difference. And people should always keep that in mind, that people in positions of authority or power or influence, they can have an absolutely monumental impact on massive amounts of people. Hopefully the people that are in those positions are good, decent people with good intentions. But always remember, lurking in the background are people with bad intentions, and they too can have a monumental impact. That's the lesson I've learned from this story.
That's a very good way to put it. And Joe Scott, what a wonderful woman with everything she did. A hero, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah. She was a giant down here in the South. I think that she was very well known across the country, but she was really revered down here in what we refer to as SEC country. And she, as a coach, dominated SEC women's basketball and on the national stage as well. But there's some natural rivalries down here between Tennessee and Alabama and Georgia and all these schools, and these schools would always dread those times that they would have to face a Pat Summitt team. And I think that what's so striking and shocking about this is that she was always, if you ever saw her on the court, she was, as a coach, she was always in your face, yelling, screaming, very vital into the game, fully aware. And it's Alzheimer's itself is just, some people have described it as a robbery of life, where, the house is essentially vacant. If you've ever had a loved one that has dementia, it's a horrible thing. And, I've, not to wax too morbid, but, I've been involved in a lot of examinations on human remains over the years, a lot of people that have died as a result of this disease. And people are surprised when they hear that you can, die from Alzheimer's, and it's not necessarily that that alone is what kills you, but it's a degenerative brain disease where you have this your proteins are not processed right in your brain, so your brain, to put it in, I don't know really, I guess the closest thing I can really describe it as is that the brain tissue itself begins to essentially digest itself. You'll see at a cellular level it just begins to break down, and that's why it's kind of the slow march toward, where people aren't able to handle their motor skills any longer. They can't communicate, and it's very, very sad to watch. I just hope that, again, with a death like hers, that people continue to focus on this. I have full faith that at some point in time they're going to be able to find a cure for it. It's just people have to continue to focus on it. So, and continue to focus research in this area.
Pat Summit gone at only age 64. Very sad indeed. All right, this next story, you're going to hear the clip first, then I'm going to play the clip that Alex Sanchez was on with Nancy Grace. So this is the story that with the 5-year-old. We'll play that story, and then we'll play a little segment of what Nancy Grace and Alex were talking about. Let's take a listen.
We begin tonight with breaking news. A house fire has killed one person and has police searching for a missing 5-year-old. Police and fire responded to the call early this morning in Bemidji. When they arrived, the home was fully engulfed in flames, and once the fire was under control, an adult body was found. That identity has not been released yet. Police discovered that 5-year-old Brittany Rose Balser had been visiting the home last night and is missing. She was last seen wearing a black shirt and pink skirt with stars. She has blonde hair and green eyes. Police are asking for your help. If you have any information, you're asked to contact them.
Okay, here is
Brian Claypool out of LA, Alex Sanchez out of New York. The story changing so rapidly, going from a 5-year-old little girl missing to a dead body is found in a burned down house, turns out to be her godmother, to now, in the last hours, her being found alive in a pop-up camper all alone with a 32-year-old man. Okay, Sanchez, if this had been innocent, for instance, if he had found the arson with a little girl wandering in front of it, why wouldn't he just call the police? Why would he call 911 instead of making off with the little girl?
I have no idea, and hopefully he'll be able to provide that information. But, I think you made a major assumption. You said this woman was murdered. How do we know that? There's been no information about the cause of death. When the police officers announced when they found the body, they said she was deceased, not murdered. We don't know if this was an accident or she died from some other means.
Good question.
Okay, Alex Sanchez, why don't you finish your thoughts, so to speak, what you were talking there with Mrs. Grace.
Well, what happened with that case was that, look, a couple of hours later, this 5-year-old girl was found 70 miles away in a camper in the company of this registered sex offender, who had a long criminal record. So you got the mother dead, and you got the 5-year-old girl missing. So I basically conceded that, listen, this girl was, obviously a victim of some form of unlawful imprisonment. Hopefully nothing happened to her. But based upon the information that we had at the time, I don't see how anybody could have said with absolute certainty that the mother was murdered. it's not outside the realm of possibility that a fire broke out in the house and the kid ran outside. I mean, that's possible. When I said that, that's when Joe came in and he, slammed the hammer down on me. I wish you would play that part.
And
but that's
Brian
what that was about.
Claypool
delete.
Yeah. That he, the fact that he went down there, and he didn't show no guilty conscience, if you will, thought that there might be a little bit more to the case. But you, now that you had a chance, a week to digest it, what do you feel now that guy's responsible?
Yeah, I think it's clear. I mean, I presented what may be some preliminary defense in the case, but I think it's not realistic to believe this kid was somehow just leaving the apartment when a fire took place, and this guy happens to drive by, takes the kid, drives 70 miles away. He's a registered sex offender. I think when you put all the pieces together, the likely scenario is this guy, who I believe lived in the apartment complex or lived nearby or something like that, somehow took advantage of a situation. And he went into that house, probably murdered that woman, started a fire to cover it up, and his main objective was to take this 5-year-old kid for whatever, diabolical purposes he had. And thank God the police were able to track him down somehow. I think through witnesses' accounts, they put information together, they tracked his phone, and then this guy actually volunteered to come in and speak with the police, and they recovered the child. I understand the child was okay, but who knows what may have happened inside that camper. But having had a week to think about it, I have no doubt the guy did it.
Wow, Jeff or Scott, so say you.
Yeah, I got to tell you, when I was first presented with this case early on that day, and this is before I knew that he had been found or she had been found. After reading everything, I just knew that if they did find this poor little girl, she would be, buried in a shallow grave somewhere. And I cannot tell you the amount of relief I had when I found out that and surprise. I was absolutely, positively surprised when I found out that she was alive. To one point, though, in this case, it always amazes me that these people that involve themselves in nefarious activity, if in fact he did set that fire intentionally, they believe that they're going to outsmart science. And I didn't say the police, I said science, okay? That, what a lot of these guys don't realize is that, yeah, there might be some things that they are destroying with fire, but they are essentially leaving behind a signature relative to how the fire was set, what modality the fire started in, what areas of the location or structure the fire was begun, and what they utilized, what kind of accelerants, and we can kind of track that stuff down very easily. And also this idea that, was she alive or was she dead? And that's something that we look for at autopsy. That's very, very difficult to cover up. These people that want to, burn up bodies. You cannot. I don't think that a lot of people in the audience really realize what it takes to destroy a human body with fire. That's the reason there are crematories. It's not like you can just take a gallon of gas and pour on a body and the body vanishes. It doesn't work like that. It takes intense heat, an extended period of time. So it's, these guys are really putting a noose around their own neck, when they do these sorts of things, because, science will find you out one way or another.
Say, Joe, do you have any information whether or not they have determined the exact cause of death?
I don't, Alex.
The
honestly,
woman.
I do not. I haven't heard anything else relative to this. I'd read the follow-up reports that the little girl had been found, but I have not heard from the medical examiner's office in Bejimini that, what her status was at the fire. Did she have soot in her airway? And someone in the audience very well might know that, knowing Jordan's listenership out there. They're pretty much on top of things. It wouldn't surprise me if someone out there knew that. I'd be very curious myself.
No question. And we do have in a case of accused rape. Let's listen to this, then we'll talk on the other side.
Here's the thing. I think I could safely assume that everybody on this panel would never support a rapist or vilify a real victim of rape. However, we do not have a rapist here. We have the court of public opinion who has labeled this individual as a rapist, but a court of law has not found him to be as such. So that is the important thing. This is different from the Brock Turner case, because Brock Turner was found guilty of 3 felony counts by a jury. This is a plea bargain, and just like Beth said, that tells me as a former prosecutor, there's inherently huge flaws in the state's case. You have an old case, like the last panelist said, you had 2 different DNAs of other men on these accusers. That rises to reasonable doubt. If the state tries to take this before a jury, they're risking a not guilty. So what they do is they try to have the defendant on the hook for something, and that is trying to bargain at this point.
What does the DNA of the other men show? It shows, or I guess the assumption is that she had sex with somebody
Reasonable
else.
doubt.
And she's got their DNA.
Reasonable doubt.
No, let me finish my point. That shows that she had sex with some other men, maybe, or else somehow she got their DNA. That doesn't mean that this guy didn't rape her. We have to get over the idea that women have to be virgins or nuns in order to win a rape case. And I don't think that's
what is the reasonable doubt? Whoa. Yodi, explain to me what you mean by reasonable doubt.
Reasonable doubt is any other explanation.
In this case, what would the reasonable doubt be?
Reasonable doubt is one of the accusers came forward 2 years after it happened. Her memory is bad. Both of the accusers' memory was bad. Number 2, DNA, like I said, found 2 other males on the accusers.
But
Number 3,
why is that reasonable doubt? Why is the extra DNA doubt?
I'm explaining that.
Go ahead.
Why is that doubt? Because the defense can argue that this individual actually consented to the sex. Yes, they had sex, but she consented, because guess what? The video surveillance or whatever camera phone that was going on at the time proved that they contradicted. The accuser said they could not have given consent because there was alcohol at play, right? Well, no. Footage shows right before the alleged rape that she was actually conscious. So, yes, there is a defense that could be brought before court.
Lisa, I'm going to give you a chance to attack that defense, and I will just start by saying just because she was awake doesn't mean she was able to render consent. Alcohol can cause blackout and many other distortions of judgment.
I mean, I'm just shocked that in 2016 we have the argument that because she consented to sex with somebody else, she must have consented to sex with the guy that she accuses of rape. Most of us have consensual sex. But that's what the DNA argument is.
Well, what is the doubt then?
Let's focus on the DNA argument.
What is the doubt with that?
Yeah, I'll focus on the DNA argument.
Okay, Brad, go, please. What's the doubt?
I'll focus on the DNA argument.
Yeah.
The issue is twofold. Number one is she never said she had multiple partners that night. There was no statement of that she had multiple partners.
It doesn't mean she had multiple partners that night.
Wait 1 second. We don't know. You don't know where that DNA was found. I presume it was found on her, but she had 2 different men's DNA on her.
And that doesn't mean it was that night.
We don't. Well, again, the point. I think the point you're making is why did she hide that, right? Why didn't she bring that up?
She didn't necessarily hide it, Dr. Drew. That's misleading.
No, but I mean
there was no statement.
That's the doubt that's raised. Is you'd at least ask the question. Why didn't she also?
Requiring every woman to be a virgin, or she can't be raped, and it's ridiculous.
No, Dr.
I'm with you, Lisa.
What happened to the presumption of innocence?
All right.
Because the court of public opinion already labels people rapists based off accusations. That is inherently wrong.
All right,
That's not how the system works.
Wahoo, Alex Sanchez, what do you have to say in terms of this case?
I don't know if you want to call me some type of male chauvinist or sexist or something like that, but I don't know about you, but I still find it kind of weird, and I cringe a little when I hear female defense attorneys arguing that they're, against the concept of women getting raped. I find that strange and peculiar. This woman, the defense attorney in that case, was being very aggressive in her defense and making all the arguments that previous generations men had always made. And it just, I don't know, somehow it makes me feel uncomfortable when I hear a woman making that very argument. But then again, I'm just an old-fashioned guy. I'm not hip or something like that. But I don't know what they're talking about, about reasonable doubt. The guy pled guilty. Once you plead guilty, you are surrendering the concept of reasonable doubt. You've thrown up your hands like Roberto de Moran and said, no mas, no mas. And you're saying, okay, I agree. There is no reasonable doubt. I'm guilty. What are they arguing about? Once you plead guilty, the argument is over. He pled guilty. So, you could argue till you're blue in the face and say he pled guilty for this reason or that reason. He pled guilty. And once you plead guilty, you're agreeing with the state that they have been able to prove their case, at least on that charge, beyond a reasonable doubt. No, it's all over, but the shouting.
Right, and they mentioned the Brock Turner case, and when you with on that show, Nancy Grace had that little, I guess, disagreement, went pretty viral. And how would you compare that case to this case?
In that case with Turner, I mean, that the woman in that case, she didn't know what happened, period, in the Brock Turner case.
Right.
In the Brock Turner case, I don't know if this guy was hanging out with this kid, was hanging out with her, and they went to this fraternity. She didn't go to that school, by the way. She came from outside. Why she's coming from outside to go to a fraternity party, I don't know. But the bottom line is she got stinking drunk. Why anybody would allow themselves to get stinking drunk, I don't know, because when you're stinking drunk, you don't know what's going on. You don't know where you are or what's happening to you. This does not justify anybody taking advantage of you. It does not. And I'm not saying that. But use some common sense, please. Please use common sense. You should expect and you should anticipate that there are predators out there, and that if you put yourself in a position where you're senseless, somebody's going to take advantage of you. And yes, nobody should take advantage of you. And in a perfect world, nobody would take advantage of you. But we don't live in a perfect world, and there are predators out there. So you should understand that they will. And I think it's extremely negligent behavior on your part to get yourself so drunk that you're lying down. You don't know what the heck is going on. Again, that doesn't justify somebody taking advantage of you. But in that case, Brock Turner, he seemed to say, no, I had consent to have sex with her. So there was some dispute about that, but the jury made a decision otherwise. They said, no, you're guilty. And he was found guilty.
And you're saying that you shouldn't get so drunk, so you're not in that position of not knowing where you are if you're drunk. And Joseph Scott Morgan, that is a very valid point. Would you agree that she should have got raped, but maybe you should not go out at late night and get yourself wasted so you don't know what's going on, and you don't put yourself in that situation for a criminal to do such a horrid thing? Your thoughts?
Yeah. It's I have family members, young women in my family whom I love very much, and I've told them to be very, very to the actions of others, but their actions as well, and the situations that they choose to put themselves in. Because it's like Alex said, we are not sheep. It's not a perfect world. I can testify to that first-hand basis. I put my experiences up against anyone. I've seen the ultimate evil in this world, and it's out there. And if you want to find it, it'll find you. That's for sure. Now, I have to say, relative to this. I felt like that this was, of course, we're talking about, appearing on television and arguing back and forth and this sort of thing like they were doing on the Dr. Drew show. I never can make sense of that show. Anyway, I'm easily distracted, and it's got the Brady Bunch boxes all over it. It's really hard to follow for me. But the lady that's screaming, women aren't virgins, on and on and on. Yeah, I got to tell you, a few months ago, my wife and I watched the ESPN 30 for 30 about the Duke lacrosse case.
Oh,
and,
really? That was a good one.
Boy, I tell you what, that was a real eye opener for me.
That prosecutor, what a piece of shit.
Relative to what can happen, relative to public opinion, and turning the tide of a locale. Those guys' lives were completely destroyed, and the only reason that they were able to, some people would say that they got away with something because they were rich. I say that they were able to defend themselves only because they had money. How many people out there are really, really poor that can't afford, a high-end lawyer?
Right.
And we got prisons right now. We've got prisons full of people, not full, but we've got a lot of people in prisons right now that are currently being exonerated because of DNA evidence that were falsely accused and they were falsely convicted. So, this cuts both ways, and I think that that the whole, what the underpinning of our criminal justice system, you are in fact innocent until you are proven guilty. And God knows, I want to have that presumption of innocence. That's for sure for myself.
I'm sure you, Alex,
Joe,
never forget that case.
I was going to say,
with the Duke lacrosse.
Joe, you said, Joe, the fact of the matter is, as you said, money makes a difference in the criminal justice system. I wish it didn't. But it does. Well, how does it make a difference? It's not just a matter of being able to hire, an experienced lawyer. That's number one. But to hire an experienced lawyer that has one investigator or two investigators, that costs money. It costs money to send investigators to other states to track down witnesses that may have left the jurisdiction. What about expert witnesses? What if I wanted to hire somebody like Joe Scott Morgan? I understand he charges $750 an hour.
Yeah, you keep believing that lie.
Just to talk to him, it's like $200.
A cup of black coffee and a bowl of soup. That's what I charge. So there you go.
Right, but if you want to hire an expert, it's going to cost some money, and then the expert's going to need tools and run it through all kinds of tests. That costs money. You need to hire photographers. That costs money. You need to conduct some other type of test. You need to hire stenographers that take statements. That costs money. Everything costs money. And the
Alex,
fact of the matter is, if you have a lot of money,
that dream team cost for OJ in '94, '95.
That dream team would cost,
Ballpark.
I would say, about $15 million. I'd say about $15 million. They had many experts. They hired attorneys from across the country to go over there and defend them. They hired all kinds of DNA analysis, which, by the way, they didn't use themselves, because had they used it themselves, it probably would have helped proven that O.J. Simpson was guilty. But that was an expensive. And the guy had, how many people have 6 lawyers?
Well, you had Shapiro, Kardashian, Johnny Cochran's assistant,
3.
and the girl.
Barry Scheck.
Peter Neufeld.
Ashley Bailey. 7.
I mean, how many people have that many lawyers?
You have to figure there were junior members that weren't appearing in court that were doing research and that costs money as well. And here's another thing, if you want to, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here with Alex here, but if you want to put forth a proper defense, the defense doesn't just take place in the courtroom. That's the end of it. The defense takes place outside the courtroom, in my opinion. And the idea is that I found that in many of these cases, the defense, if they had the wherewithal, they can literally drown the DA in paperwork, and that's a huge thing. You know, when you start to talk about billable hours and all kinds of motions and all that sort of thing, that's a thing that a lot of people don't see. I think they don't they don't understand about discovery and all these sorts of things.
Right.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
And that documentary I recommend to everyone, which is Joe was talking about 10 years ago, what they had the Duke lacrosse scandal, where this was the prosecutor spent the day in jail. That's all you need to know about that case. But
that guy, what was his name? Nipong, whatever his name was.
Yeah, Nipong. Yep.
Yeah, that guy ended up getting disbarred. That prosecutor for egregious behavior. But you know, Joe said, a lot of the work takes place outside the, you know, to prepare a case, a major case takes many months, sometimes more than a year or two to prepare a case. And Joe's right, you could wear out the prosecutor because you can have a bunch of junior attorneys writing up elaborate legal arguments and expecting the prosecutor to answer those arguments. And you could do that night after night after night and walk in the next day with these elaborate legal arguments. And the prosecutor, sometimes they got one assistant, maybe they got a paralegal there, has to answer all these arguments presented by the opposing counsel. And you know what? It does take a physical toll on you. It takes a physical, an emotional, and intellectual toll on you. And the idea from a defense point of view is to wear out your opponent, grind him down, because then he becomes tired. He's not thinking straight after a while. After a while, he says, I'm not going to argue this point. I'm not going to argue that point. He starts conserving his resources. But meanwhile, the defense is winning little points here, little points there. That's what money does. Money talks in the criminal justice system. Period.
Money runs the world. Okay, let's go to a few callers. Let's go up to Huntington Beach, California. And our friend is Sarah, and she says hello tonight. Good evening, Sarah. How are you?
Hi, Jordan, Alex, and Joseph. It's so good to be back. I've missed a couple of shows, and I was really disappointed. Really great topics tonight. Thank you. Very, very good topics. Touching a little bit on the first rape case that was being discussed, and I did watch Dr. Drew that day and, you know, had a headache like everybody else from all the yelling and screaming. But I understood the fact that he did not plead guilty to rape. He pled guilty to sexual misconduct. And so I think I wasn't sure if everyone knew that, because I think, I mean, do I know really what the big difference is between sexual misconduct and rape? But it sounds like rape is way more serious. And apparently there was problems with the witnesses and the victim and memories and all of that stuff. That being said, and listening to the conversation about it's just rampant. This college rape is just rampant. I just, for the heck of it, I was looking up statistics. The very first article on campus rape was written in 1957. A long time ago.
Yes.
And it, you know, I hate to say that I'm even afraid to talk about what I want to say because I get so much criticism. But when you listen to a lot of the Lisa Blooms and all these other women attorneys that, you know, you can't. Yeah, Gloria, all wrong, right? You can't. You have to be really, really careful about what you say. I am in no way at all blaming someone for getting raped, but I have to agree. My niece just turned 18. She's going off to college in Oregon, and what do you think was a 2-hour discussion that I had with her, besides her mother and father. Do not go and get so drunk that you are passed out. I mean, you have to take some, you have to, and I think I finally thought of the word, you have to prevent it as best as you can. You may not prevent it 100%, but you have to try to prevent it. And I think that I just don't like this mentality that you will get raped and you have no responsibility. Of course you have no responsibility over someone else's actions, but you just have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself in so many other ways. Take care of yourself in that aspect, and maybe that rapist, that pervert, that SOB won't be able to rape you, and there'll be one less rape. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Don't put yourself in that situation. Alex, go ahead.
See, Sarah's absolutely right. I mean, look, let's say I decided to walk into a really bad neighborhood infested with crime, and I'm wearing all kinds of gold chains, and I'm carrying wads of $100 bills sticking out of my pocket. If I get robbed, aren't you going to say to me, what the hell did you expect?
Right.
Don't put yourself in a stupid, vulnerable position. Don't do it. You could avoid becoming a victim of a crime by just exercising some common sense. For these kids, these young girls, I'm sorry, women are more vulnerable. Women are targets. That's number one. That's just a fact of life. They're targets. They're smaller. They're not as strong as men. Okay? There's not as many women around as men at these fraternities, for sure. So they have to exercise extra caution. Don't put yourself in that position. I'm not saying that you should be a victim of a crime, but if you end up being assaulted, one of the reasons may be because you got yourself stinking drunk. And
well, I mean, if you leave your doors and windows open,
on some level, you bear some responsibility for what happened to yourself.
Exactly. You leave your doors and windows open, you might get robbed. You better chance of getting robbed than if you lock everything up. But on the other hand, why do you and Joseph and Jordan, all three of you men, why is it so rampant? I mean, why? I understand men and women want to have sex, but why is it that especially athletes are doing this? I just don't get it. I don't understand why they have to rape people, because are they exactly the same as if you're at the mall and you're going to your car and some horrible stranger abducts you and rapes you and murders you? Are they of that same cloth, or is it the environment they're in and the drugs and drinking that they do? I'm not sure. What do you think about that?
I think those are different classes of rapists. I think the guy that is lurking in alleyways looking to jump the first woman that comes by and rape them, he's in a class by himself. I think that the other class of abusers are people that, a lot of them are men, that's a fact, and they're sitting around drinking and getting high, and they believe that the women are coming over because they want to have sex and just get them drunk, and it's one event leads to another event, as they say, and a lot of poor decision making. But I don't think the athlete, fraternity rapist is the same as the guy, climbing in people's windows at night and raping them. But it's all no good. It's all no good.
It's no good. But do you think that's why he got 3 years and he didn't get 30 years? Because if he was one of those lurking rapists, he would have gotten 30 years.
Yeah,
right.
I think he got 3 years because there was alcohol involved, and there was delays in, let's say, bringing the allegations, and I think that there may have been some questions about whether or not there was some consent. Everything becomes murky when it comes to alcohol and drugs everything becomes murky and unclear. You're not getting a precise view of what happened. You're trying to piece together information. And that's why these cases may not be as strong as other cases.
Yeah, very, very true. Well, thank you, you guys. I'll let everybody else talk. And welcome home, Joseph. From what I see, you had a fantastic time with your family in Great Britain. And Alex, always a joy to see you on Nancy. And yes, I watch all the time, so I see all your little arguments with her. And
we only got 8 more weeks to her. So, yep.
And is she finished in a week only? 1 more week?
8 more weeks.
No.
She'll be out there the summer, right?
Yeah,
till October. 12 more weeks.
Okay. I love Nancy. I know sometimes people give her a bad rap, but I love her. And Jordan, keep up with all those posts. Your posts are really great every day. So love you guys, and talk to you soon.
Take care, Sarah.
Bye-bye.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Sarah.
She definitely had some interesting points, and let's go out to Virginia.
Yeah, she's good.
Yes, absolutely. She did a wonderful job in terms of the rape story. Let's go out to Virginia. Our friend is Mary, and she says hello. Good evening, Mary. How are you?
Hi, Jordan, and hi, Alex, and welcome home. Scott, from your wonderful trip. We followed you along on Facebook.
Thanks, Mary.
And I just want to say that I will definitely miss Nancy Grace. I watched her years and years ago when she was on Court TV, and that's the first time I kind of really got interested in following trials and things like that. And I actually, the first time I ever called on one of these shows, it was to Nancy Grace, and I was scared to death because I was afraid that she did kind of, she just, she listened to me and she agreed, and then she cut me off halfway. So you don't have this talk back and forth like we do on your show, Jordan.
Oh, no.
Well, I just want to say I totally agree that, money buys justice in a lot of cases. And like Alex says, all your defenses, everything that your defense attorney and staff in office does for a defendant costs a lot of money. And also vice versa, because the prosecutors usually work for they work for the state, and their budget is also set a certain amount. Now, you take a case like Jodi Arias, where the defense was filing a motion a day, practically, and all these motions have to be answered. Isn't that correct? Defense motion and answer
they
to.
do. They do have to be answered.
You can't just fine.
If you don't answer it, then you're basically admitting to what your opponent is asserting.
Right, exactly. And I wanted to say one thing about the Texas woman that shot her daughters. That was tragic, horrible.
Terrible.
I did read that she had tried to get guns before, and she was not allowed to have any. She was turned down. And apparently her grandfather had given her some of the guns that she had. Now, it doesn't say why she was turned down. Maybe it's because of her history of mental illness with the depression. Maybe she was honest and put that down, or they checked or whatever. But she didn't get the guns herself. They were given to her by her grandfather.
Well, if that's true what you're saying, then why would the grandfather, why would a grandfather knowingly give guns to someone that has some serious emotional disturbance? That's number one. But number two, let's say the grandfather didn't know that she was seriously disturbed. The husband must have known that she possessed those guns. She was advertising on Facebook that she had those guns.
Yeah.
How come there wasn't some type of action taken beforehand to come in and confiscate those guns?
Well, because as you guys said before, it's nearly impossible to get someone committed, and especially with a history of depression. I mean, you know how many millions of people have depression? It's not like schizophrenia; it's depression, and I'm sure the grandfather or even the husband never even imagined in their wildest thoughts that she could do something like that, just suffering from depression. If she was schizophrenic, like Andrea Yates, that's a different story, because she was definitely mentally ill.
I don't know if depressed people should have guns, because a depressed person with a gun may shoot themselves in the head. I'm not sure if that's such a good idea either. You know.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's true. I mean, I think it's interesting, though. Don't you think that she said, "I want to make you suffer for the rest of your life"? And that was her motive for killing her daughters, is to make him suffer, because she did not point the gun at him.
Right.
Well, you know what? She succeeded.
I think that was in her head. I think she's sick to think that way, and to do anything like that, and just to suggest that she definitely needed to be in a mental hospital, in my opinion.
And then, I mean, I don't know, what do you think, Joseph, about that? With her having depression, I mean, if I compare her to Andrea Yates, who looked depressed, who acted depressed, who looked disheveled and dirty and unkempt, and she had the reason for killing her children was to save them from Satan. And then you have this woman who takes a selfie every other day, has got all this makeup and looks normal to everyone else, and then she turns around and does something like that, and then you know what I'm saying, Joe?
Well, I think that this is what I do know. I know that you can talk to any number of police officers that are out patrolling the streets, and they will, and you can simply say to them, "Do you have that particular address in your beat?" And when you say that, they're going to know what you're referring to. They're going to know that you're talking about that address that everybody in the department hates to go to, because there are chronic problems, and it becomes part of the psychological term here, the milieu. It becomes standard, in police circles, investigative circles. The abnormal becomes normal. And so you just know that the people at that house are crazy, and you just know that things are just going to go on like they are. But, the thing is, they ran 17 different calls to this woman's house, and that is a huge breakdown. You want to talk about public safety and all the stuff they talk about relative to community policing, which we talk about a lot in universities. Look, it's all fine and good to go out and have fairs where you blow balloons up for kids and let them know not to be afraid of cops. But when the rubber hits the road, this is serious stuff. You got somebody out there that is truly a danger to the community, and laws are set up now so that there is no way that a social service can come in and intervene, or that the courts can come in and intervene.
No, because the father is there, so some of this falls on the father's fault.
Exactly. They're still married. They're still married, and so until he, decides to sign the paper himself, and even if he does, she still has, quote unquote rights.
Oh yeah, and you only get a temporary
still remain
hold
on the outside.
Yeah.
And God knows we wouldn't want her rights violated, but her daughters are dead. So
she was hospitalized 3 times.
Right.
And then she left, and she was on medication for depression. And just the last thing I wanted to get you guys' comment on the difference or likeness of the Stanford rape versus the Vanderbilt rape. One being, in my opinion, sort of so excessive, and then so lenient on the other side.
Alex, you want to go for that?
Well, I forgot the particulars of each
on the
case.
Vanderbilt.
So many.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
getting to be too many cases. I mean,
yeah, I know.
Involving these. But you know,
well, the
right,
Vanderbilt is those jocks that were football jocks also, and the girl got so drunk she doesn't even remember anything. And one of the guys brought her into his room, and then called some friends, and they all sort of gang raped her, and they took a video of it.
Right. I mean, that's horrific. But the common theme, the common feature, again, is alcohol. I mean,
right.
I seriously doubt. I'm not. Again, nobody deserves to be raped. I would never. I've got 2 daughters. You know, I don't want anything like that happen to them. They went to college, but this girl, I seriously doubt somebody was, putting alcohol and forcing her to drink large quantities of alcohol. Why is this girl? Who taught this girl? Who educated this girl? Who schooled or tutored this girl? That it is okay to drink to the point where you're so knocked out, anything could happen to you. Where do you learn that from?
I think you learn from, in a way. I mean, I hate to, from being in the college atmosphere, because this is what a lot of college kids are doing. They go out to get blasted, and it's to see who got blasted the most. But they go out in groups to protect each other. But it's who gets blasted the most, and that's what they do on the weekends. Some of them.
Well, that whole culture needs to be reevaluated.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you for taking my call, Alex, and welcome back, Joseph, and thank you as always, Jordan. Love your show. Bye. You guys have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Have a great website, Trials and Things.
Trials and Things. It's a Facebook trials group.
There you go.
Joe's in it.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay,
there you
bye-bye.
Go. Sure, yeah.
Say, Joe, you were just in England or Scotland. Where were you?
I was in Wales and England. I went and spoke at the University of Bath.
Anyway, did you ever hear about this case in Scotland? And I don't know if you've been to Scotland, but it somehow reminds me this might have something to do with the origins of the type of work you do. And what it was that in Scotland a couple of 100 years ago, there were medical schools there, and they needed bodies to perform autopsies on to study the human condition, but it was illegal. So they were paying people to go and dig up bodies that were recently died, and then bring them to the medical schools. Medical schools would pay them money, and there were groups of people that were making money delivering dead bodies to these medical schools. But then what happened was the government got sophisticated. They started preventing bodies from being dug up and stolen. So what these guys were doing is they were going and basically killing people. They would kill people and then deliver a fresh body to the medical school.
Right. Yeah.
Until they got caught.
Yeah.
And they got hung.
Yeah, I cannot remember the name of this particular. There's 2 guys that are involved in this, and I've read about this before. I cannot recall their specific name, but there's, and they weren't the only ones. Up until I think, let's see, up until the just prior to the Civil War in America, it was illegal to dissect a corpse. Period. You didn't do that, and so you can imagine medical science had a very difficult time advancing, and so doctors would go to great lengths. If you want to check out, that the audience wants to check out something kind of cool, there is a huge archaeological find at the Medical College of Georgia. If you put in, probably in a Google search, skeletons found at Medical College of Georgia in Augusta, Georgia, they were doing some renovations on one of the old academic buildings there on campus, and this is a very old medical school, and they found this just vast collection of skeletons that were beneath a building, and they're what we refer to as as it wasn't like a regular ossuary like you see in Italy, you know, where they'll build temples out of bones, or you know, in the catacombs. This was just like stacked groups of bones that were just essentially piled. And what was going on is that the medical students prior to the Civil War had 2 slaves that they were paying. Well, they were free men, but they would send them out to the graveyards, dig up the bodies, and they would bring them to them. And the medical students would actually do dissections on these cadavers by candlelight and by lantern, and then they had a huge hole in the floor that they would push these bodies off into, or what remained of them, and they'd have to do this at night. And and there's all of these kinds of stories like this. Yeah.
Isn't this the origins of expert criminalists like yourself? Isn't this the origins of that?
Yeah, we're body snatchers. That's what we are. We're all ghouls, man. We're all ghouls. Hey, you know what? What's really interesting is that's actually where Mary Shelley got a couple of her ideas for Frankenstein, about grave robbing, and because that was big news. That was big news back then. So.
Right. I find that story fascinating.
It is kind of cool.
Very well. Definitely a awesome program. I want to thank you guys. Couldn't have done it without you. We had some great topics from the death of Pat, unfortunately. Sad stories, but stories that needed to be tackled. And I thought everybody came with their A game today. So thank you, Alex, and thank you, Joe.
Hey,
it's been a lot of fun. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Okay, guys, we will speak to you next time here on King Jordan Radio.
Fios is not cable. We're wired differently, which means you can get the fastest internet available with equal upload and download speeds from 50 to 500 megs. So you can upload 200 photos before your favorite song is finished. Click the ad and switch to Fios today to get our best offer ever. Fios is not cable. We're wired differently, which means you can get the fastest internet available with equal upload and download speeds from 50 to 500 megs. So you can upload 200 photos before your favorite song is finished. Click the ad and switch to Fios today to get our best offer ever.